Good morning, 8th graders. This is your last English class before spring break, so you have almost made it. Congratulations. I'm going to spend most of this video talking about your close read, but before that I want to get some of our housekeeping issues. I have them all kind of written over here, which is why I'm looking to the side. First things first, please, I'm begging you to put your name as the title of your Roots notebook and your journals. Most of you have done that. Thank you so much. I even tried to remind you in the Google Classroom homework question to do that. Some of you still haven't done it. And that kind of tells me who might not be watching the videos as well, which you need to do. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is going over what is due today. You need to do another journal. That's going to be every class, so just kind of get in that habit. You're going to have a close read for Across 5 Aprils, and then you need to finish, the No Red Ink grammar practice if you have yet to do so. I told you on Monday that you could kind of split that between Monday and Wednesday if you needed to, or you could push it off till Wednesday if it was taking you too long on Monday. But today is the day to pay the piper for grammar. So make sure that you do that. Now, all three of those things, journal, close read, grammar, are due today by 11:59 p.m. So once again, when your classes are assigning homework, if it's one of your core classes like English, the work that I'm assigning is due that day. It's not one of those like get it in by the end of the week kind of deals. Now that being said, I will be accepting late work from weeks 1, 2, and 3 if you have work that you were missing last week or you just now realize that your Roots notebooks aren't going in the folder. I will accept all of that through Thursday night at 11:59 p.m. when spring break officially begins, because I'm going to be grading. I'm going to spend my Friday grading, and then I'm not going to do any kind of grades or anything like that over spring break. So don't submit any homework or things like that over spring break, because I'm not going to be grading, and then we'll start fresh after spring break. So if you have late homework, this is the last call to get that in. I'm still giving credit for work that has been done or needs to be done for the first 3 weeks. Okay, so enough about that. Let's get into what we need to be doing. So you read a first read of an excerpt from a book called Across 5 Aprils. You also read, previous to this, a speech by Abraham Lincoln called A House Divided. And you can kind of see in this particular novel, a literal house is going to kind of be divided by the Civil War. And the excerpt that you read is just kind of an introduction to this, because the Civil War hasn't really broken out yet. There's just a lot of tension on both sides, and people are having to kind of choose who they're going to fight for. And there were a lot of states that were kind of on the border between the North and the South that had to make some tough decisions as to which side they were going to support, and the people in those households didn't necessarily agree on what to do. So they picked different sides. In this case, that's exactly what happened. So I'm going to go ahead and look at your close read here. Actually, you know what? You don't actually need to see me at all. I can just do this. Excuse me. So hopefully you already watched the intro video, but if you did not, you can go ahead and watch that. And then you're going to go into the read section, and you'll see that there are 5 skill-focused questions. But before we get into this, and before we get into kind of the meat of this, I know that there's a lot of names that are kind of thrown at you in the story that you're like, I don't really know who's who. It just kind of makes assumptions that you understand what's going on, but maybe you didn't quite catch that. So I'm going to go over that really fast. There are characters in here named Matthew and Ellen, and those are the parents. The first person that we're talking about is Jethro, and he is their very young son. He's like 9. And his parents are Matthew and Ellen. And then he also has three brothers who are in this as well: Bill, John, and Tom. And then John's wife is in this, and then they're also their sister Jenny. The whole dinner is kind of thrown together because their cousin Will Scram is in town, and so he's kind of the one who starts this conversation or wants to talk about what they're all going to do. Will's is from Kentucky, and that's why when this conversation starts, it says, "Will Kentucky go to secession?" That's what that means right there. I know that it was all kind of written in a regional dialect, so some of it might have been harder to read. Excuse me. But this is what this first question from Matthew says. Will Kentucky go to secession? Will they secede like some of the other southern states? And then they have this conversation about that. So those are who our characters are. I want to show you a map. This is the United States that was split by the Civil War. You can see the dark blue here. These are Union states. They did not permit slavery, as well as the light blue. Those were territories. The dark orange and the light orange did not permit slavery. The dark orange ones are actual states. And then there were these states right here in between, border states, that permitted slavery, but a lot of people in those particular states were the ones who were kind of split. Now, if you'll notice, though, we're talking about southern Illinois, which is right down here, and it's right in between Missouri and Kentucky, these border states, and it's even very close right here to Tennessee, which is a southern state, which is why they were discussing how the people of southern Illinois are very different from the ones in northern Illinois, and they have different interests and things like that. So it makes sense that this particular household is kind of conflicted as to which side to support. So when you're thinking Illinois, normally you're thinking all the way up here, Chicago, northern cities, things like that. But we're talking about southern Illinois, which is actually a lot further south than you're probably thinking that it is, which is why it's confusing. So let's take a look at some of the skill focus questions. A couple things that you're going to need to know for skill focus questions is the first one here is about point of view. And I want to review really fast what some of those points of view are. Now, typically for a story, you're either going to be in first or third person, and you can tell the difference in the pronouns that are used. If it were I, me, my, you know it's first person, but he, she, him, her, he said, she said, that kind of stuff. Or names, someone asked, things like that, that means that it's going to be third person. And so we know it's in third person. In fact, it already tells us in the question it's third person. But then the story is going to be different because of that. And it's limited omniscient. And if we remember, omniscient means all-knowing, and limited just tells us that we get to see a few characters and not necessarily everyone. So what this means, third person omniscient, limited omniscient, it means that we're not getting this from one person's perspective. We're seeing a couple different people, and the omniscient just means all-knowing, meaning that the narrator can tell what several different characters are thinking and feeling. So the narrator is able to kind of get into their minds and their thoughts and their feelings. And this would be different if it were a different point of view, where we only saw their actions. We get to know kind of how they're feeling, and that makes all of the difference there. And I'm going to go ahead and do the last skill focus question here with you, number 5. It says, in the last paragraph of the excerpt, Matt Creighton makes his final statement on human decency and the evils of slavery. How does the author make use of dramatic irony in this statement as a way of foreshadowing or giving readers a hint of the Civil War to come and of the many ways it will change the country? Highlight text evidence and give support. Make annotations. So I'm going to go down. It says in the last paragraph, it says, Matthew Creighton shook his head. Human nature ain't any better on one side of a political line than on the other. We all know that, but human nature, the all-over picture of it, is better than it was 1,000, 500, even 100 years ago. There is an awakening inside us of human decency and responsibility. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't grieve for the children I've buried. I wouldn't look forward to the manhood of this youngest one. Now, if you remember, Dramatic irony is when we, the readers, know something that the characters in the story don't. And in this particular case, we happen to know that the Civil War is about to break out and is about to happen. So, one interesting fact about the Civil War, I don't know if interesting is the right word to use, this is a graph of military losses in American wars. You can see that the Civil War is at the top here, has around 620,000 deaths, and some people are even saying that this is a lower estimate, and that the number could be as high as 850,000. This is the single bloodiest war that America has ever had. Part of the reason for this is because we made up both sides of the war, so there wasn't an enemy that was from a different nation. But that's a lot of people, and it's interesting that he made this statement about how humans are becoming more decent and responsible when we're about to have the bloodiest battle or war that we've ever had in human history. In American history. And something else that is in here, it says, I wouldn't look forward to the manhood of this youngest one. So Matt doesn't actually know if his youngest son is going to live through the war that has yet to happen. So something that's dramatic irony right here is that he says that he's looking forward to the manhood of his youngest son, but he doesn't actually know if his youngest son is going to survive this war. He doesn't know about the war. And the other part was the one I just said, where there is an awakening of human decency and responsibility. Humankind is about to experience bloodshed of before this point of, I'm just going to go with epic proportions. That doesn't seem like decency. Seems like the opposite. So I want you to look at 2 other skill-focused questions and answer those with annotations. And then you're going to go on to the writing section, and the prompt that's on my screen is different from the one that I gave you. Basically, the prompt that I've given you is going to be all about that last kind of statement from Matthew that we looked at just now about human decency. And I want you to kind of think and to figure out in your own opinion, what do you believe about human decency, human kindness, human responsibility? Are we getting better? If you look back 100 years from where we are right now, so if you look back to 1920, are humans better than they were then? Are they worse than they were then? Have they not changed? I want you to kind of explore that idea, and then I also want you to kind of look at this from a biblical perspective. Is there anywhere in the Bible that can support your particular answer, or does the Bible say the opposite of what it is that you're thinking or believing, or how does the Bible support your particular viewpoint if it does? So I want you to kind of look at, okay, here's what I was thinking, here's my opinion on this, and then kind of looking for that higher authority in the scripture of mankind and humanity. And if humanity is getting better, worse, staying the same, if humanity can change, if that's even possible. Kind of explore all of those things. And you need to do that in 6 to 8 sentences without a lot of fluff. A lot of you did really well with that in your last one. I appreciate the solid writing, so just make sure that you're continuing that. That is all that I have for you. I'm sorry I tried to make it quick, but obviously that didn't really work. I hope you make it outside at some point during your spring break, get some fresh air, get some good rest, maintain social distance. But happy Easter.